Hello and welcome. This is Richard Kuhns of the Stress Management Institute giving you a hearty welcome to Part 1 of the Falling In and Out of Love program. There are as many attitudes about love as there are people. What I'll be sharing with you may be different than anything you've heard before. Avoid trying to analyze it. Instead, simply place it on your lap as a brick and let it be there. Every time you listen to the recording, and with your ongoing daily experiences, what's said will take on new and different meaning. Listen to tracks 1 through 9 minimally once each week, although some find it useful to play the various tracks over and over at home or in the automobile. Listen to track 10 for instructions on how to relax, and track 11 and part 2 every night as you go to sleep. Good. Now let's take a look at this thing called love. Interesting, love defies meaning. We can't call it an emotion. Love just is. Yet the attitudes about love that we have been ground into us, programmed into us since we were toddlers. One typical way of getting over a loss of love is to bring the other person down off the pinnacle that we often place them on, as we make them greater than human. The approach is to use stop statements. That is, whenever one would catch one thinking of that person, cancel, stop, and then create a positive image of some time in the past before that person. This is a typical method of getting over someone. Then there are typical ways of falling in love or pretending to be in love. Not that they are wrong. Always doing favors, being there all the time for them, being overly dependable. Taken in extreme or used as a substitute for love creates this as a problem. Ultimately, neither approach works and disintegrates, leaving dependency, jealousy, anxiety, and leaves one at the whim of time passing. 1, 2, 3 or more years before they let go of the guilt-laden moments and move on. They constantly try to recapture those moments, like going back to the same restaurant where they had a romantic moment 20 years ago. And so for the person who wants love, the more they try to find love, the more they find themselves out of love. And then there's the person who wants to let go and fall out of love, and it seems that the more they try, the more they find themselves in love. It's interesting. The more we say that we don't want to think about someone, the more we think about them. And that's because of how the brain works. The brain skips over the word not, and the focus is on thinking about them. Likewise, thinking about giving up someone or doing without someone causes one to be more anxious. You want to watch and avoid this kind of thinking. This kind of thinking keeps your life on hold, like being on the phone and put on hold. Sometimes they play music while you're on hold, but sometimes it's just blank space. The object is to turn off the feelings you've had for some time, either by them passing on, leaving you, or rejecting you, or by you ending the relationship because it wasn't going anywhere and then having remorse. Initially, I was going to make 2 recordings, one for falling in love and one for falling out of love. During my research, I discovered it's impossible to fall in or out of love. When we say we want to be over someone or get them out of our head, we find that we aren't able to complete that goal. Past memories come into play that keep us from being here in the now, because we allow ourselves to think back to how it could have been, or ought to have been, if we only had done such and such, or if the other person had done such and such. The result is we are not living in the now, but instead living in the past, playing the guilt instrument. Let's talk about this word called love. This program is for a person having difficulty completing a past relationship, either with a person having moved on or having passed away. It is also for a person having difficulty for someone finding love. Love to each person means something different. One person says love means that the person is fond of me, likes to be with me. And when the other person says I love you, it means that this person really likes to be around me. To another person, I love you means a 4-bedroom, white Cape Cod house with blue trim in a cul-de-sac, picket fence, an eagle on the mailbox, 3 children, and a golden retriever. We each have different perceptions as to what this love thing is. These perceptions go along with our expectations, which play a role in our judgments. And if we don't live up to our expectations, our judgments interfere, and we're in a vicious circle. We can't fall in love when we want to love, and we can't fall out of love when we want to fall out of love. We can't forget someone we've lost and start anew, and we can't get someone whom we love and keep that person, so we are at a loss as to where to go and what to do. To get the most out of this program, take notes. If you are trying to fall in love, or if you want to forget someone and fall out of love, then it is important to notice that there is some need in you. There is an incompleteness. This incompleteness will affect how you feel about yourself. It will affect your confidence, and you're caught in a vicious circle, and your self-worth is in question. You don't feel good about yourself unless you are in someone's company, and if you don't get the gratification you feel you need from them, then you don't feel good about yourself. And the more you need them to feel good about you, the further away they go. And after much frustration, eventually one of you comes to the conclusion that the relationship doesn't work because of the dependency issue, and a divorce of the relationship is necessary for one of you. This only aggravates you are not feeling good about yourself, which was there from the beginning, so the result is that you are in a vicious circle. You want to feel good about yourself, but you can't unless you have a strong footing, a solid base, a relationship, and you can't get a solid footing because you need it. You have to have it to experience a sense of completeness. Not being able to be satisfied drives the relationship further apart, more distance. Hostilities build and you move away from love, and it is this need that actually becomes a barrier to the experience of loving, and you might say that you are in a hole. There's a story about a fellow who fell in a deep hole. He cried out for help, and no one came to throw a rope down. Ultimately, he came to realize that if he was going to get out of that hole, he'd have to do it himself, and so he did. This recording is not about handing you a rope to get out of your hole. It's about giving you the insights and courage to allow you to tap into your own power to climb out on your own. Unfortunately, when you are trying to move on to another relationship and let go of a past relationship, or when you are trying to find that one person, the right relationship, one is often operating from a law of scarcity. That is to say, there is only one person out there that I can feel good about myself when I'm around that person. Well, we usually don't get to that level. It's only one person out there that can make me feel good. But when we really look at it, no one will make you feel good. No one will make me feel good. I can only choose to make myself feel good when I'm in the company of someone else. Back to the law of scarcity. Listen to it. It's in all the songs, and by now I'm sure you've heard them all. The Rejection songs. I'm nobody without you, babe. Love is such a hurting thing. You are the sunshine of my life. People who need people are the happiest people. Listen to these songs, and you'll notice the law of scarcity is constantly being driven into your mind. And when we operate out of the law of scarcity, then we feel there's only one person out there who can fill the bill. The result is that we become self-limiting and we stay in the hole. Realistically, if you count every song that sings of the law of scarcity, there must be 10,000 out there, one person for each song. You'll find that there are 10,000 great people for you to meet, and they are all free right now. Let's again talk about this thing called love. The best definition for love is that it is the essence of what holds the universe together. It is all the same. We make it into different things. We make it into parent-child love. We make it into romantic love, brotherly love, love as in marriage. Actually, it is all the same. It is that our relationship and contacts do differ. Love, though, is all the same. Now let's go on what might seem like a tangent for a moment and take a look at our composition as human beings. We each are composed of bone, muscles, nerve, and organs, which are composed of cells, which in turn are composed of chemicals, which in turn are composed of atoms, which in turn is energy. Fundamentally, we each are energy. We are a part of the same whole, of the same pool of energy. This pool of energy, let us call God. God is in each and every one of us, and energy is power. And what each of us have is power to use this energy in any way we choose. So our brains and our collective being is pure power, and power doesn't care how it is used. Like nuclear energy doesn't care whether it's used to destroy ourselves from the face of the earth or to treat cancer. However the energy is used, it's not bad. It may be unfortunate if it's used to destroy, but either way, on the atomic level, it's the same energy. The energy itself doesn't care how it's used. Just as with each of us, the energy doesn't care how it's used. It can be used to create health, harmony, prosperity, success, vitality, love, relationships that work, all which we attribute to God, good. We also have the potential to create illness, anxiety, disharmony, and it can be used to create dependency, scarcity, poverty, hatred, upset, weakness, and relationships that don't work. But this is also God. It's all from the same pool of energy. And the energy doesn't care. It just moves from form to form and will continue to do so on infinitum. God knows all, and God doesn't ridicule, hate, reject, or judge. One cannot hurt God either, and God cannot be hurt. What keeps us from truly knowing God, that energy and how it works, and keeps us from knowing each other, our essence, is our learned prejudices, our inhibitions, and our beliefs about each other. What I invite you to do is take what I've shared with you and again place it as a brick on your lap. I'm not asking you to accept this or to believe it. I'm asking you to look at things from a different point of view. I am neither challenging nor condoning religion. If you trace the meaning of religion back to the beginning, it means new ideas. Trace the word church, and you'll find it means a collection of individuals in search of knowing more about self and the meaning of life. The point is this power, this godlike quality rests within you. Just as we can use this power to create anxiety, poverty, illness, failure, and relationships that don't work, we can use this power to create peace of mind, success, prosperity, and ecstasy in relationships. And that choice belongs to you. Essentially, each of us are the same. The difference between us is what we've done with this energy. It is the prejudices, expectations, values, and beliefs that make each of us different. Underneath all these differences is pure love. And what keeps us from the real experience of this love is our resistance to be at the effect of another. In other words, when other people differ in their opinions towards us or about us, or when another person has a different feeling or idea which we have difficulty understanding, or putting into our realm of belief systems, or believing them, if we resist their beliefs and the right to their beliefs, then we do not respect the infinite wisdom and infinite qualities they possess and will be at the effect of that. We will be prejudiced by it, and it will affect how we feel, and it will control our thoughts as a result of it. That and that alone brings about the creation of rights and wrongs, goods and bads, bringing in the entire realm of judgments, guilt, worries, and so on. Here the ability to let things be is important, for the fact is that the world works perfectly. As a part of the whole pool of energy, as a part of God, we have created and recreated each and every experience we have. Yes, we do have the power, and that right now may be difficult for you to see how you've created what has happened. Each and every one of us are the cause of what happens to us. Nothing just happens to us. The degree to which one allows the other person to be is called faith. If I judge you and make you wrong or do not allow you to be, or to experience your feelings, or if I think your feelings should be otherwise, or if I invalidate your experience, or if I try to change your opinions, then your lack of response to my wants, or your refusal to change what I feel you should do, will cause me to feel upset. Then if I feel upset or disappointed as a result of you not doing what I want, then I am at your effect and am allowing your emotions and actions to determine my feelings. If I am willing to let that be, that I'm upset as a result of what you've done, then it will disappear. This is true for any emotion. If I allow myself to truly experience the emotion, it disappears. If, on the other hand, I am unwilling to experience this upset, therefore I'm at your effect. And this upset will create a barrier that keeps me from being with you. This barrier could be depression, anxiety, rejection, constant arguing, sickness, headaches, and the list goes on. All because I'm unwilling to let you be and give you choices to what you want to do with your own power and want to make you different. What each of us create with this power is what is, nothing else. I create my own happiness, anxiety, depression, anger, excitement, and you create yours. No one makes me happy or depressed. I choose to be happy or depressed in response to how I perceive your actions affecting me. Happiness. Just because it's here today doesn't mean it will be here tomorrow. We have the potential to create and recreate it every day. Because happiness is an emotion, a different energy level, it too, when experienced, disappears. To experience it again, it must be recreated moment by moment. How often we take it for granted or just expect that someone is going to make us happy. How often we look to others to be responsible for making us happy, and how often we expect to make someone else happy or be responsible for their happiness. Happiness is not created out of mere want. It is created out of intention. Intention is everywhere. Attention, that's with an A, attention, on the other hand, is only on one thing or person at a time. Intention is everywhere, and will is the force that makes what is. Intention lets what is be and brings about what is into being. For instance, if someone breaks an agreement with me, then that might be exactly what I intended. And it's important for me to look at how or why I might have unconsciously wanted to make that agreement broken, as opposed to wanting to make them wrong. Let's take a look at another brick. It's called completion. Before we look at completion, I suggest you take notes. Whenever you are studying something, the more senses you use, the faster the learning. Listening involves the auditory sense. Writing involves the tactile sense, and reading what you've written involves the visual sense. You're probably finding a lot of what's being said out in left field. That's why I use the analogy of the brick. The source of this information comes from what I've learned at the Earhart trainings, that's the S training, Eric Butterworth's book titled Life is for Living, Dr. Theodore Isaac Rubin's book, The Angry Book, my experiences in working with clients, and my own personal experience in letting go of relationship, and more recently the works of Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra. As you take the opportunity to immerse yourself into this philosophy, you'll find yourself moving ahead almost at the speed of light. No need to take years to get over a relationship. It can be done in weeks or in months. Now this thing called completion. When we let things be, it's a sense of completion. Completion is not something that has to be done and over with. Being complete is a function of allowing. It simply means letting be. And that might mean letting something be that you're unhappy about. If we can let it be, it will in the process disappear. However, it's important that you let it be forever. For if you try to make it disappear or try to let it be, then that only becomes a barrier to you experiencing it. A definition for letting it be. Letting it be is when it does not affect your aliveness or the quality of your experience. That's letting it be. For instance, if you stomp your toe, letting it be means that there's no shouting and no screaming. You just go on about what you're doing and that's it. It doesn't affect the quality of your experience or your aliveness. So as you see, it's not always easy to let things be. Letting things be can be a challenge. Now we've made some emotions not okay to have. That is anger, hatred, depression. The creation of emotion creates the willingness to experience life. And if you can't have an emotion, that is, if you can't allow yourself to be angry, bored, or depressed, then you can't be with anyone who is angry, bored, or depressed. When you can allow yourself to feel and experience these emotions, then you can be with anyone who is in that emotional state. To resist experiencing emotion is unhealthy. Avoiding, trying to get rid of, is unhealthy. It's like putting your life on hold. You're frozen there until you experience the emotion and move on. Some actually create illness to avoid emotion. Now, if you can let anger, boredom, depression be, you can release you from their negative effects. And what keeps us from experiencing these emotions is our learned attitudes about these emotions. For instance, no one likes to be around an angry person. Anger serves no useful purpose. You shouldn't be depressed. You have so much to look forward to in life. Being complete is going as far west as you can. When you do that, you end up right back where you started. Being complete is not having more of something. It's a matter of letting be what is. When something is complete, your ideals, should-bes, comparisons, all of that is dropped away and is immaterial. Your ideals no longer obscure it. No need to be attached to or needing something. It's just allowing it to be. It's our attachments to our expectations that can literally destroy us. It's letting go of ideas that something could be better or different. To complete is not to experience a sense of inadequacy. It's simply an experience of what is. For instance, someone has done something and you have become upset. Now, getting complete is not to make them wrong for what they have done, or to try to change what they have done, or make them apologize for it. Being complete is simply to notice what has been done and notice how you feel about it. If you can let it be, you can let it be, and it doesn't affect the aliveness or the quality of your experience. If, on the other hand, you couldn't let it be, then you can notice you feel hurt or upset in response to what was done. Now, you can get complete with yourself. You don't have to tell this other person how you feel. You can do it mentally and notice that you are hurt by what was done. You have chosen to feel hurt, and you might look at what your need is to feel hurt. Or you can get complete by saying to them, I notice you've done such and such, and I dislike it. You have every right to do what you've done. I just don't like it, and I feel hurt in response to what you've done. That's being complete, nothing more. No making wrong or wanting them to fix things. If they do, they do, and if not, that's okay too. And as you allow you to truly feel hurt without making the other person wrong, it will disappear in the process of living, which is a relatively short period of time. If, on the other hand, you do not allow yourself to feel hurt, but instead make them wrong, get defensive, it could go on day after day, week after week, month after month, and so on. Now back to love. In the perspective that we've grown up, boy meets girl, they have a good time, fall in love, and boy says to girl, I love you. Now we're going to do some role playing, and you're going to be the girl. And you, the girl, experience the same. And you reply that you love me too, and it's great. In a short period of time, we notice an echo. I say I love you, and you echo, I love you. Next, whenever I say I love you, I'm depending on you to reply, I love you. And it becomes a need. When I don't hear you echo back, I love you, I have a greater need to know that you love me, and so I say it louder, I love you. And before you know it, you feel guilty for not loving me as much as I love you because I can't give you space and let it be that your feelings may be different. But continuing to insist that I love you in hope of getting back that echo, I love you because I need that, I am incomplete without it, and I have some comparison and judgment from the past that determines that you are rejecting me, and because I wouldn't want to deal with that, even if it were true, that brings about a sense of insecurity and need. And it's almost impossible to love and need the same person because it's not the love, but the need for security. And with that, the space and distance between us diminishes, and the result is that we smother each other. Then if I'm depressed or upset and feel rejected, and if I cannot let it be that's how I feel, then depression, rejection, or upset becomes me. This then rules me and takes you further away from me. I don't exist unless I create you being. It's my expectations of you that create your responses, and those responses are a function to the degree to which I allow you to be, which is called space. This space is what we call distance. When I truly allow you to be angry, upset, happy, depressed, or whatever you choose, without making you wrong, and when I likewise allow myself to be upset, angry, happy, or depressed, the emotion disappears, and beneath it is love. This love is the foundation of the universe. Beneath all anger, hatred, hostility, happiness, jealousy, excitement, anxiety is love. That's why it's impossible to fall in or out of love, because love already is. We can only take ourselves away from loving or take ourselves to loving. Let's go to the dictionary and look at the word fall. Nowhere in the dictionary is the word fall associated with love. Here are some pertinent definitions. To yield to temptation, do wrong, sin. To be captured or conquered. To come by chance. A becoming lower, as in reduction of price. Overthrow, ruin. Loss of status, reputation. A yielding to temptation, wrongdoing, mortal lapse. And if you look at fall in, the definitions are bend inward, cave in, agree, to line up in proper formation. And when you look at people who fall in or fall out of love, you see that's exactly what they do. They follow one of these definitions. And nowhere in the dictionary is the word fall and loving in the same context or used together. So when we look at this thing called loving, we're looking at how we can take ourselves away from it or into it and letting go of this idea of falling. Love is really the force that binds the universe together. It's what binds the planet and every living and non-living thing together. It's what keeps the atoms from splitting apart. It's what keeps energy from going astray and drifting beyond the universe. To get this concept clear in your mind, draw a circle about 3 inches in diameter on a sheet of paper. And on the inside of the circle, write the word loving. Love is this simple. Now we as creative beings say, it's got to be more to it than this. So we get creative and put structures on the outside of the circle. So on the outside of the circle, draw several mounds all the way around the circle, 4 of them. And inside the space of each mound, write depression in one, anger in another, rejection in another, and happiness in the last one. Now, of all of these, how many are you comfortable handling? Well, except maybe for happiness, most people aren't comfortable handling them. So we put more structures on top. Now, on the outside of the 4 mounds you've drawn, draw more mounds on top, maybe 15 or so around. Inside each, write one of the following: defensiveness, happiness, jealousy, boredom, confusion, excitement, uncertainty, malaise, upset, happiness, depression, anger, fear, hatred, romantic love. Now, if you look at these, you'll see that for the most part, they are variations of what's underneath. And except for romantic love and happiness, you're not very comfortable with these either. We think we experience happiness, but when we really look at it, we only handle happiness on a contingent level. For instance, if I knew some calamity would befall me tomorrow, how could I be happy today? I'd be worried about what was going to happen tomorrow. That's contingent happiness. So for the most part, we're not comfortable handling what's in these mounds either. And what we do is create more structure on top. So draw another group of 20 or so mounds on top of the last mounds that you drew. Now, man is creative. We realized that the second group of mounds were related to the first level of mounds. And one thing man is not, and that is dumb. So let's get creative. Inside this third level of mounds, write one in each of the following: headaches, anxiety, colitis, heart condition, cancer, arthritis, insomnia, fears and phobias, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, obesity, cigarette, drug, and or alcohol addictions, to name a few. We got doctors to go to for these, right? Many go through their lives bouncing from one mound or sickness to another until they hit one like cancer, and then they don't have much longer. What a shame. Instead of going around the circle, it's important to go towards the middle of the circle. Go through the boredom, anger, upset, frustration, depression, rejection, and into loving. For it is the emotion that's a barrier to the experience of loving. For until we're willing to go through the experience of emotion, we just keep trading symptom for symptom. Well, how did we get up in these mounds of illness anyway? What takes us away from loving? Well, if you look at any relationship, whenever you have two people in relationship, there will always be a differing of opinion. And whenever there's a differing of opinion, differing of concept, one person is right and one person is wrong. And whenever we get into right and wrong, and if we do not acknowledge our feelings, we move up into these mountains. So if you think I'm wrong about something or vice versa, maybe you will get defensive and climb out onto the defensive mountain. And maybe I'll get angry and climb up onto the anger mountain. But then I might not like anger and climb over into the resentment mountain. And you might climb over into the depression mountain because you have trouble handling my resentment. The end result is that we're up on our mountains away from loving, throwing rocks and stones at each other in the form of innuendos. We create each other wrong, and the result is that we create hostilities, and we create sickness, all because we've made life into a right-wrong thing. And a year from now, we won't remember what we argued about, the concept that is. We'll remember the anger and the hostilities because we've never allowed ourselves to experience them. Getting back into loving is to allow oneself to experience the emotions, moving through them into the circle of loving. When you are in a circle of loving, it doesn't mean that you have to like this other person's acts, the things that they do, or their behavior. It's I love you and I dislike your acts or your behavior and what you are doing, and I love you. And you can allow them to be just the way they are without making them wrong. The degree to which we are in loving is proportional to the degree to which we let each other be or give each other space. It's literally impossible to effectively communicate with someone with whom you are afraid of hurting. Realize each and every one of us are a part of the same whole, God, and we cannot hurt God. God knows all. Withholding our feelings is only a means by which we do not let things be. Withholding our experiences and communication is only a means by which we fail to complete. Remember, we don't complete to make others wrong or change their opinions or actions, but merely to acknowledge what is so for us. Withholding our communication and experiences is only a means by which we create barriers to our fears of rejection, the fear of loss. In other words, when we withhold, it just means we are avoiding the fear of rejection, the fear of loss, fear of embarrassment. When we allow ourselves to experience our fears, they dissolve. Otherwise, they remain. We demean others when we say they can't handle something. They are God and God knows all. Now this does not mean that you are to rush to confess something such as having an affair. As they say, the truth hurts, and doing so in a situation such as this may only be a means of you dumping your guilt onto someone else. It's your problem, not theirs. The reality is that the truth experience disappears. If your affair was because you felt ignored, unimportant, or bored, these feelings belong to you. They are your mountains, and you are neither right nor wrong for having the affair. Simply away from loving. And then again, depending on your value system, you could be in loving and simultaneously be having an affair. And in an altruistic reality, your spouse would condone it. But most of us, because of our limitations in our ability to handle emotions, are easily taken from loving into jealousy. When we achieve true communication, it results in harmony, diminished effort, and expanding of understanding of one's relationship. Then there's an experience of completion, love, and satisfaction, resulting in the accomplishment of communication done through our experience. Experience of what is felt, experience of tuning into our feelings, to our emotions, doing what is so for you right now. Tuning into what it is that you do not want to communicate. Tuning into it brings you the experience. Through the experience it dissolves, for life is, whether we like it or not, a game. And the game can be very serious with rules and regulations, or we can let it be. We can have lots of fun playing the game. It's as though you paid $5,000 every day to be in this amusement park called World, and you're going to get your money's worth. So far, I have not mentioned sex, and yet infidelity is a major reason why many relationships end. Why sex hasn't been mentioned is because it has nothing to do with love. If your mate has strayed from you, you have a choice. You can go up on a mountain of anger, resentment, and jealousy, throw rocks and make that person wrong, or you can take it to the next level. Go through that experience of anger, rejection, hatred, and get back into loving. And ask yourself what your need is to have this happen at this time. There's a great book written in the 80s by Meryl Shane called Some Men Are More Perfect Than Others. An example in her book is of a young newly married couple where the bride became very ill. The husband and his family felt cheated, like they got a dud. For years as she went through her illness, she was treated like the black sheep of the family. When she began feeling better, she had an affair. And when her husband and family learned of it, they made her even more wrong and justified the ensuing divorce. So who was really responsible? We can say it was her actions in having an affair that led to the divorce. But what excuse does the husband have for moving away from loving and going up on his mountain of feeling cheated? With the way the situation was handled, the result speaks for itself. The fact may be that your spouse has been with someone else, but the reality may be that you've been up on a mountain of anger and upset that took you away from loving. Then what do? Make your spouse wrong by jumping to a mountain of jealousy, hurt, and vindictiveness instead of going through the feelings back into loving? Of course, the reality might be that you've been in loving all along, and your spouse has gone away from loving into a mountain of lust. That's beyond your control, and you have several options. Jane had been married for nearly 15 years, and she confided that her husband has had an affair for much of the last 10 years. I asked her how she felt about it, and she said, "I love my husband. I used to take it personally, but in spite of his problem, he's a great husband, is always there for me, and a great father to our children. I refuse to let the swapping of some epidermal cells ruin my relationship." She clearly could let it be that it was his problem as opposed to her problem. End of story. The other option was to stay in a space of loving and take action. I love you and have a problem with your infidelity. I'd like a divorce. These two options are at different ends of the same spectrum, with many more options in between. In all cases, it's from a space of loving. From the circle of loving, you can look at both your wants and needs and the other person's wants and needs and be free of making anyone wrong. If there is a difference in your wants, it's simply that your rivers are flowing in different directions and you are parting paths. Unfortunately, very few divorces or separations are from a space of loving. Most are from mountains of emotional jealousy, rejection, anger, and resentment. It is not uncommon on one level to be in a space of loving and realize this other person is simply incapable of providing you the love and respect that you are deserving, and that ending the relationship is the right thing to do. And then finding yourself feeling a strong sense of loss, anxiety, rejection, and hurt, especially if you see the other person with someone else. This is normal, and although it seems crazy, it's very real. The goal is for you to allow you to feel the hurt, rejection, anxiety, and loss. If the person with whom you were in loving has departed, perhaps passed away, likewise you can stay up on one of those emotional mountains, or you can come into the circle of loving. The goal is the same. A mountain that you might be in is that you might be angry with a person for having left you at such an inopportune time. It's not pretty and no fun. It's a mourning of a relationship, your attachments. And it's not to make the attachments right or wrong. Sometimes we get attached to things that are not right or good for us. In my first marriage, my wife, who has passed on, raised pedigree dogs. She bought this one miniature poodle because she felt sorry for it as it was kept in a small cage. The pen I built for the dog was so large that we had no place to store the cage, but in the pen with the dog. The next day we found the dog back in the cage. Anger is often a very challenging emotion. It is no fun to feel and involves the fight hormones, meaning your body is literally ready to rip off heads. Yet anger is often an emotion in which one is angry at oneself. Angry for being in the situation in the first place. Angry for being affected by the situation where what someone else does has impact. And even though the person who may have done the dreadful deed might be gone from this plane of existence, it doesn't change the anger. There are 3 safe ways to discharge anger, and that's what's important to do to get through the mountain of anger and into loving. The first safe way is to physically discharge the emotion by beating on pillows, things that can't be hurt, things that don't fight back and can't hurt you. The second way is to write a poison pen letter to that person. Do all the cussing and blaming you can and never give it to the other person. Instead, put it away where no one else can find it and add to it every week or so. After a period of time, you'll find that you've moved beyond the anger and that the thoughts of the past no longer haunt or anger you. The third way is to do role-playing. This is best done with a counselor or therapist, where you, in first person, present tense, tell the person with whom you're angry all the nasty things you would have written. Of course, the therapist plays the part of the person with whom you're angry. During this release, you may also beat on pillows to get through the anger. Now, one important point that keeps you from getting stuck in anger and empowers you to move on faster than you might have thought possible, and that is to respect your intelligence, your brain. After all, it is the opinion or conclusion your intelligence is arrived at that determines the degree of anger. Your intelligence, your brain, has invested a lot of thought into knowing why you should be angry. So rather than invalidate your intelligence, thank it for its opinion. Right or wrong, it's immaterial. Now the irony. Even though your intelligence has justified you being angry, your intelligence also has a whole bunch of ideas why you shouldn't be angry, too. It's no fun to be angry. It's a useless emotion. Doesn't do any good to be angry, along with maybe a dozen or so other reasons. The internal confusion alone could give the therapist a full-time job with you. However, it's easily handled by simply thanking your intelligence for its opinions, thanking your brain. For the fact is, you are angry, and the way to loving is to feel this emotion. Banging pillows, writing poison pen letters, role-playing, or just plain hurting. It's to say, thank you, brain, you think I'm justified to be angry and still shouldn't let it affect me. Thanks for your opinion. I prefer to feel and experience this emotion. And now here comes the cavalry to save the day in the form of preference statements. I prefer to move beyond it. I prefer to forget about it. I prefer to see it from a different point of view. I prefer to let it go. And I prefer to move on into loving. As you go through the anger or any uncomfortable emotion, they aren't any fun. In fact, they are suffering. Werner Erhard, founder of the S-Training in the 70s and 80s, says he's in favor of short-term suffering rather than long-term suffering. Now, if you are the one who is about to end this relationship, before you do, particularly if this has been an important relationship, let me put in a plug. I suggest taking advantage of one or more of the following programs: Making Relationships Work, Ecstasy in Relationship, Handling the Effects of Anger. Then make your choice. Now, if you choose to let go of that person, or if that person has let go of you, you can hang on, in which case you'll probably drive the person further away, or you can begin the process of letting go. Now, I'd like you to write the following affirmation. I willingly and wantonly let go of, put in the person's name, and release him or her to his or her greater good. I let go and I trust. Greater good means that there are an infinite number of directions to go in one's universe, and we wish the other person good and growing and prospering. And as you are releasing the other person to his or her greater good, you are releasing yourself to your greater good. I willingly and wantonly release me to my greater good. It's not that it's better than. You're simply letting go. Has nothing to do with giving up or doing without or not being able to have something. You're letting go. Now that you've written your affirmation, notice if you have any doubts as to your ability to release the other person and let go. And write one down, after which write thank you. At this time, I'm asking you to be negative. Write the affirmation once again. And if you notice any doubt, such as, but I'll have no one and I'll be lonely, write it down and again write thank you after that doubt. Write the affirmation 4 or 5 times each time you listen to this part of the program. You might uncover different doubts each time. Get as many doubts as you can. The thank you is for your brain. Some typical doubts are, I'm afraid someone else will make it work with that person. I don't want to go through the dating scene again. But there's no one else that can meet my needs the way that person did. No matter how silly they seem, write them down and notice which ones come from the law of scarcity. All of these are self-imposed arbitrary beliefs. Arbitrary in the sense that someone else would have entirely a different set of beliefs, and they are what has been impeding your progress. The hypnotic relaxation yet to come will begin the process of dissolving these self-imposed arbitrary beliefs and limitations. For now, during the day, whenever you have a thought or a sense of sentimentality about this person, I want you to thank your brain. Thank your brain. You think I should be thinking about this person, or how much I miss him or her, or how rejected I feel. Thanks for your opinion. I prefer the release, the other person's name, to his or her greater good. Experience and feel the rejection, or whatever feeling you have, and you, my creative brain, forget about him. This last command is any of your preference statements we've looked at earlier on this track. Now you can listen to what I'm saying and it makes sense, but to actually write it and repeat it to yourself empowers you to take it into a totally different level. Following are a few powerful affirmations for you to memorize and repeat in place of worry and fear. I am a child of the universe, deserving of a loving, rewarding, fulfilling relationship that manifests itself in love, harmony, common interest, and whatever else you desire. My interest, things that I do, and work are a pipeline through which I tap the wealth of the world's abundance in relationships which are right for me. Through my personal connection with the infinite being and infinite intelligence, I create relationships that are rewarding, loving, prosperous, and healthy. All energies I invest come back to me multiplied with significant beneficial rewards. My relationships prosper every day, whether I'm working or playing. The more willing I am to prosper others, the more willing others are to prosper me. By using these affirmations, you create a condition in your being, in your energy, which allows you to be open to the creation of rewarding, fulfilling, loving, creative relationships. Now let's state your goal. Write the following. I am in a relationship that is loving, rewarding, fulfilling, and right for me. Now, even though you can come up with 1,000 reasons why this is not true for you right now, I want you to write the statement and repeat it to yourself whenever your brain is idle. By owning it, you set the forces of intention in the universe into play to create the reality. That's your power. That's the power of God. And when we say this relationship is right for you, that's to mean it feels good. It's appropriate. Red, played by Morgan Freeman in the movie Shawshank Redemption, says, "Get busy living or get busy dying." It's important to realize that we as humans are very addictive. It's this addictive nature that causes the pain and suffering that we feel when we experience a loss. It is, however, a mistake to believe that we are addicted to a particular person. We are instead addicted to the feelings and emotion these people enable us to feel when we are with them, or know that everything is okay with them. In their absence, these emotions are absent, and hence the pain of withdrawal begins. The irony is that some of us experience loss from unhealthy relationships. In other words, it's possible for us to be addicted to emotions we feel when we are in relationships that are unhealthy. In part 1, I shared with you the experience of the poodle that went back into its cage. The dog actually preferred the cage to having a large pen to roam about. We as humans often prefer the limited comfort of the known to the uncertainty of the unknown. In some regards, much of our pain is from fear of the unknown, how we will handle the unknown. Changing perspectives and forgetting is ultimately our goal. You feel the pain caused by the absence of those feelings to which you became addicted. It can happen when you have a fleeting thought about that person. Sometimes one can understand a situation intellectually and realize the loss is for the better, and there's nothing that can be done about it. However, there is an emotional self that responds completely differently. So you might ask, if I know that it's for the best, and that I must get on with my life, why do I feel this tremendous sense of loss? Not realizing that we have both an emotional and intellectual self, it's real easy to get upset with yourself. What's the matter? Am I crazy? No, you are not crazy. It's simply important to know that the intellectual, rational thinking self is ahead of the emotional self, and that the goal, instead of self-incrimination, is to bring the emotional self up to date to agree with the intellectual self. Example, you bring a cuckoo clock home. It awakens you at 1 a.m. It's the emotional self, that part of you responsible for your survival, that awakens you. Your conscious intellectual self realizes that it's only a cuckoo and gives you a command that it's okay to go back to sleep. Your emotional subconscious may awaken you several more times, and each time your conscious intellectual brain approves of sleep, as opposed to getting a gun for self-protection against a cuckoo. Ultimately, the emotional subconscious brain is brought up to date to agree with the intellectual conscious brain, and you begin sleeping through the cuckoo. Ultimately, our goal is the same. And to aid this, we are looking for opportunities to intellectually and emotionally perceive the loss from a different point of view. In addition to, I willingly and wantonly let go of so-and-so, I let go in a trust, we add preference statements and the power of emotional anchoring. Remember, the pain is there because of how your conscious intellectual and or unconscious emotional brain perceives the situation. Rather than assume we're only dealing with an emotional level, let's handle both and start by going for a change in perception in the intellectual brain. To do this, imagine for a moment that you are in this large room with lots of sharp objects that can hurt you if you step on them or walk on them. Now let's make the room perfectly dark, and you have to try to find the doorway. You might wander aimlessly for hours before you find the doorway and require hospitalization by the time you escape. By using preference statement, it's like lighting up a lamp over the doorway. It's so bright that it not only lets you see the door, it also illuminates the dangerous objects in the room so you can safely get to the doorway. Here are a few of them. I hope you've already written down most of them from part 1. I prefer to see this relationship from a different point of view. I prefer to learn from this experience and somehow benefit from it. I like to let go and forget about it. The word forget is very powerful. Now what about the emotions of hurt, despair, rejection, and depression? One thing for certain. If you resist them, they persist. If you truly allow yourself to hurt, sure, you might be tempted to dilute them with food, booze, or drugs to dull them, but diluting them doesn't get rid of them, and only may complicate things by contributing to substance abuse. Most of us hate feelings, so rather than pretend they don't exist or try to dilute them, let's handle them this way. I feel down, hurt, and depressed. I hate these feelings. I want to experience them. You see, the moment you truly experience an emotion, it disappears. It's gone. And see the relationship from a different point of view. Let it go or forget about it. This is how it works. You move through the emotions and simultaneously intellectually perceive the relationship differently. One more thing, the emotional ground. As you are saying mentally to yourself or aloud, if the situation allows, I feel the emotion, whatever it is, and I dislike it, hate it. I want to experience it, move through it, and see the relationship differently. Forget about it, and so on. You take your right fist, or the palm of your hand, and strike your chest just below your shoulder in an emphatic way. Not too hard as to do physical harm, but an enthusiastic strike. And you can add, yeah! Sure, you might not know at this very moment how you can view the situation differently, and you are directing your mind to discover it. It's the 15-85 rule. When you begin this process, you should hurt 85% of the time and have only 15% peace from the occasional nap. Day by day, week by week, you shift to 85-15. With improved sleep and diet, ultimately, you go to 100%. John was only 30 years old when a woman he had been seeing stopped the relationship. John was devastated. and was immobilized for 2 years, literally sitting in a chair feeling depressed from the loss of his only true love. In time he met someone else and was surprised to obtain the same wonderful emotions from another relationship, which eventually collapsed too. Again he was immobilized, but this time by using some of the principles of this program he freed himself in 6 months and was again surprised to find the same good feelings and emotions from another relationship, which after a few months also collapsed, leaving him again immobilized. This time he realized that his self-worth was based on him being in a relationship. He also realized that he became the broken relationship. This comes from understanding that emotions are a result of events working out the way we expect or not expect. When things work out as we expect, we feel happy, glad, excited, loved. When things do not work out as we expect, we feel depressed, angry, upset, confused, uncertain. In part 1 of the program, we looked at the circle of loving and all the emotions surrounding the circle. Say that's one dimension. Another dimension of emotions is to look at them from a linear view. 1. If something does or doesn't work out as expected, we'll feel an emotion. It's like that the situation that did or didn't work out is a domino that falls onto another one representative of emotions. Then if we cannot let it be that we feel an emotion, we try to dilute the emotion with food, drinks, drugs, or manifest the emotions in our health and let our immune system take the brunt, or ulcers, or hypertension, and the list goes on and on. The goal, of course, is to leave the unhealthy reaction out of it. Put space and distance between the domino representing the emotion and the last domino that represents an unhealthy reaction. If we can let it be, and it's not that we should let it be, that our relationship has been lost, we'll feel depressed, rejected, and so on. If we can't let it be that we feel these emotions, we'll dilute them by eating excessively, smoking, booze, drugs, or unhealthy manifestations in our health, worry, aggravation, anxiety. Now, if we stay with overeating, smoking, drugs, and so on, what are we really eating? Smoking or diluting? It's the broken relationship, correct? It's like we're a puppet and the situation that contributed to the emotion is running our lives. In other words, we become or identify with a lost relationship. When John realized this, he said, "I'm happy. I can now be me instead of being my depressed relationship. Sure, I have a depressed relationship, but I don't have to be my depressed relationship." For him, it was like taking off a heavy, wet, cold, weighted down coat. Seeing the relationship from a different point of view enabled him to let go of the depression and allowed him to see the relationship from a creative perspective. He moved through his pain in 3 months with a new perspective. More recently, he left a marriage of 5 years and was feeling great about moving on until his wife announced that she took on a lover. Intellectually, he knew he wanted to continue divorce proceedings, but emotionally he felt like the dog that went into the cage. Emotionally, he was wrecked and his thinking was very confused. He used this program and within 6 weeks moved from 85 worry, 15 clarity, to 15 confusion, 85 clarity, and then to 100% clarity. His intellectual knowing for a few weeks got thrown a curveball, where he actually hoped he could make the relationship work because he understood her and why she treated him badly. He made several important realizations. 1, he had become his depressed relationship and could begin looking at it as a problem in need of a creative solution. 2, he began remembering the silent treatment she gave him for days on end. He remembered how controlling and manipulative she was. He remembered how she used him to vent anger she had towards her own father, rejected him sexually, and took every opportunity to demean him. Thirdly, he saw a relationship with her was unacceptable. And even though starting over involves a lot of uncertainty, disappointments, and confusion in the dating game, he'd rather deal with those feelings in the open pen, so to speak, than the humiliation of being in the cage. Fourthly, he realized that his understanding of her behavior didn't excuse it. And whenever he'd be reminded of something he missed in the relationship that brought him pain, he'd say to himself, "I feel down, hate it, and I deserve better than to be in a demeaning relationship," as he would use his right hand to strike his shoulder 2 or 3 times in succession with a "yeah," as he would do it in the quiet of his office, living room, or automobile. This time, he moved on in 6 weeks as opposed to the 2 years his first relationship cost him. And here's another powerful command you might want to write down. I command my subconscious mind, with a tap on your chest, to forget so-and-so, the person's name, the aspects that you wish to forget, and release him or her to his or her greater good by giving me the creativity, new interests, new perspectives, vitality necessary to go on with my life and forget him or her, with a few more thumps on your chest. Write it and commit it to memory. You can say command or will your subconscious. After all, it is your subconscious and is here to only serve you, no one else. So don't worry about command being too strong. You have the right to command anything you desire from your subconscious mind. Put together the language and command statements to serve your greater good. And you too, using these same techniques, can bring your unconscious emotional self and your intellectual self up to date to a new healthy perspective for you, so you can live life to its fullest. The following hypnotic portion of the program gives you these suggestions day by day in every way. You'll find yourself moving from the 15 to the 85 to the 100% clarity.